start off with a prayer. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhuntu Sahavyam Karavahi Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Oh, may our study be good. May we gain vigor from it. May we gain nourishment. May we not quarrel about anything. Quarreling is a little useless direction of energy. And Shanti, Shanti, Shanti 3 times, we can be protected from all the obstacles of this world, all the obstacles of which are there by what insurance people call act of God, and all the obstacles that other people may give us. Obstacles we ourselves create, obstacles created by others, and just random things. Now, we begin now with the chapter 3. So, I remind you, the stanza before 1 went Vihaya kamanya sarvan kumans charati nispraha. That man attains peace who lives devoid of longing, free from all desires, without the feeling of I and mine. So that's the whole idea. The whole idea of karma yoga, any yoga as such, is you take away the feeling of doership and profit. The act of profit, complex, you transcend, is the idea. You have to understand what is action, what is karma, from the root krit, meaning to do. So, action you can use the term work in a physics sense. Any expenditure of energy. So the various categories. You can put it as job, career. We can say wealth earning. But then there are other actions, domestic, cleaning, cooking, and so on. Physical. If you're wise, you'll take this earth car and exercise it. Other actions, worship. Worship is an action, because sandhya is an action. So prayer is all an action. Study is an action. Sitting can be an action if you're thinking of something. It comes under the category of worship. Generally, sitting is not recommended. So all action, all activities, and there are many varieties. We have to bear that in mind when we study this subject. Otherwise, we tend to think that action is simply what Arjuna is engaged in, namely his career, kshatriya. We were just saying how the definition of action has to be there. That will clarify things for us a little bit. Now, the third chapter begins like this. Arjuna asks a question based on some confusing things in the second chapter, principally to do with discrimination. But karma is there, attached to it. We're saying here's the principle. Having gone through the principle, here's the practical portion. So all actions must be done with a sense of detachment, but principally karma yoga is renunciation of fruits. The technical term, meaning all the results of any action. Any action you do will have a result. It comes under a formula, general formula in nature, that every action has a result, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. It's just a law of physics. Desha, kala, nimitta. The whole world operates in a fivefold way, but 3 of those things, we can condense it to 2 eventually, would be space and time, and causation. So desha, kala, space and time. This Einstein's dimension, extra fourth dimension, he put. So here it's there, space and time. That's two. What are the others? These are evolutionary forces. In Vedanta, they're expressed in different ways. The capacity to hide, capacity to reveal, and the capacity to project. Because, principally, they bind us either to happiness or knowledge, or they bind us to greed, or they bind us to stubbornness, non-thinking, darkness. These are all called binding elements, like ropes, guna. It's very important to understand the term guna and repeat it time and time again, because the object of all these disciplines is just clarifying and purifying the mind, making it predominantly sattvic. When you make it pure, two things occur. Revelation occurs from inside, and grace flows. These two things happen. I read something funny when he sent me. Yoga is the martial art for combating the enemy ego. The ego is not your enemy. This door is not your enemy. When you know it's there and how it functions, you can go through it and come back as you want. It's not an obstacle. It's only an obstacle if you don't know its operation, if you don't know it as a tool. So it doesn't restrict your freedom. Egoism, that's something different. Egocentric action, that's different. So there's a confusion naturally that arises for Arjuna. You mention all these things. You mention that knowledge is actually superior to action, but yet you ask me to go and fight in this terrible war. So that's exactly what he says. Arjuna Uracha. Jayasi chet karmanaste mata buddhi chadatra. Tat kim karmani kore mam niyojayasa kesha. Superior. Jayasi. Arjuna said, if it is held by you that knowledge is superior to action, why then do you ask, O Keshava, why do you enjoin me on this terrible action? Then he says, Vyamishtrine, with these perplexing words you are, as it were, confusing my understanding, my comprehension. Tell me with certainty the path by pursuing which I may get at the Supreme. So there are two things mentioned, two paths, two faiths. One, jnana, here with a concession to the Sankhya philosophers. Sankhya is a dualistic system. This is put into a Vedantic context. So therefore, out of concession, second chapter is called Sankhya, Sankhya Yoga. But now this is Karma Yoga. So two paths are there. Jnana Yoga for the keen of intellect. Those people who can bypass everything and go straight there. The principal occupation is, in a concentrated way, discriminating what is real, what is unreal, what is permanent, what is non-permanent, what is of great value, what is valueless. The question being, is there something in man that was there 1,000 years ago? There's something there now, something will be 1,000 years hence. Is there something like that? Whatever we look at, we find in the category of vagaries. Where does that come and go? No permanence in it. So a constant, keen intellect, discriminating constantly like that, is an occupation in itself. For the majority of people, this work is the way. And that's why this Bhagavad Gita is for the majority, you and I, the housewife, the factory worker, the barrister, the school teacher, whatever it is. If you are to renounce the fruits of all your actions, the question arises, will you get the fruits anyway? The answer is yes, you will. In abundance. Infinite abundance comes to you when you let go. So it's a kind of feng shui principle, if you will. If you hold on to this tiny thing here, you can't accept $1 million dollars, isn't it? So as soon as you let something go, abundance flows to you. It's a very interesting key. Most of us don't understand it. Most people think, let's fence in my property and all my belongings and so on, my career, my wages, my bank account, all the fruits of that. Let me just enclose nicely, make it mine. And on that basis, from my castle, go and combat everybody else. That's my strategy. But by its nature, it's limiting. And our resources are infinite. So how to tap into that? The Karma Yoga, it looks like a renunciation. It looks like a sannyasa. A giving up, a letting go. And that is true. But as soon as you let go, there's a flow inward. So that's the point. And what's the difference, therefore? The difference is in one key thing, bhavana. Bhavana is the key difference. Something that is creative. You do the same action, but you introduce some sweetness in it, some moistness in it. Bhavana. Do you have some examples for that? Yes. You see how Lakshmi, she was in what's called Swayamvara. That means you have to marry somebody. You have to select somebody. So she made this criteria. I'll select somebody who doesn't desire me. Lakshmi stands for wealth and prosperity, abundance for everybody. I'll select somebody, a husband, who doesn't want me. Then she saw Lord Vishnu lying on the cosmic ocean, oblivious to anything. Said, he doesn't want me, he doesn't want anything. So she put her garland around his neck and sat at his feet. Now look at the beautiful thing. As among all the names of Lakshmi, Rama is one of them, goddess of beauty, looking throughout the three worlds to see who is my devotee, and whoever it is, I'll give them grace, I'll give them abundance, whatever they want, prosperity, whatever they want, I'll give it freely, without them asking. I will look for them, they don't have to look for me. Normally in devotion, that's the other way around. I am here, where's God? And then when I catch him, I say, now I've caught you, like in Ireland catching a leprechaun, keeping him in a jar and saying, right. Then when I don't want him, I put the cap on the jar. When I want him, bring him out, like a genie. Bring him out in that way. Satyabhama and Rukmini were wives of Sri Krishna. And Satyabhama was very proud. She thought she was the best wife. She thought she had the most love, and she thought she was most beloved also. But Rukmini was much better, much more devoted, but Narada came along as a stirrer and made a contest. Said, okay, what we'll do is we'll put Krishna on a scale, and then you see if your love, if all your possessions, if all your wealth equates to the value of Krishna. You put it on a scale. Narada was in accountancy mode at the time. So she put all her jewelry on the scale. Now the forfeit of this is, if she can't bring Krishna up to scale, then he'll be sold as a slave. He sat there quietly. He put all her jewelry, got all the jewelry from the other wives, couldn't make the adjustment. Eventually, because Narada had goaded her and said, Rukmini's love is greater, you now have to resort to her. Please put your offering on. She took a small tulsi leaf and put it there, and the whole thing came up. And she took all the jewelry off, and just the tulsi leaf alone was enough and outweighed Krishna. So the point is, it's not what you do, it's what the bhavana is that you put in it. You do the same action, but what is the sweetness that you put in it? That's the meaning of this whole chapter. Then again, looking at this reward that comes in, I'll always remember, I think it's Rabindranath Tagore who gave a small poem. The scene was, a king was coming along, and there was a beggar. And the beggar had just gotten a few grains of rice that day, and So collected in his handkerchief, and there's the royal procession coming along. So he thought, I'll jump to the front of the queue. I'll ask the king for something, and I'll get all the wealth. So he jumped to the front of the queue, looked, there's the king's procession coming along. The king fortunately stopped exactly where he was. He looked at him, and the beggar thought, this is my chance. I'll ask for all the wealth in the world. But to his surprise, the king said, faithful subject, what will you give me? He's shocked and surprised, opened his handkerchief, and took a smallest grain of rice from the corner of his handkerchief and gave it. The king's procession went off. The beggar went home that day, opened the handkerchief. In a small corner of his handkerchief was a small grain of gold. But alas, if only I'd given the whole lot away. So that's a peculiarity when you have. So we say renunciation of the fruits of action. But in answer to the question, will other fruits come? They will come in abundance. Why? Because we're tuning into a cosmic principle which is always giving and full of abundance. Infinite resources are there. Just tuning in. All spiritual practices are tuning. It's not that God is somewhere else. God being here, truth being here, we require tuning. Like the BBC broadcast is here. The waves are here. We don't have to go to London for it. Tuning here, keeping the attention lovingly attuned to the glory of the Self, Atman, is the way. And whenever the mind goes away, it comes back. And because all of us are engaged in activity, that's our resource to do it. How will we do it? All actions must be dedicated in that way. Which actions? All these actions with their subcategories. The job, the career. As I said last week, what's the difference? We're going to light a candle, let the shine. Or switch a light switch on. Both have the same effect. They light an area. In fact, if you want a very, very expensive meal, then you have to reduce the value of resources. You'll spend a certain amount going to a restaurant, and they'll put chandeliers there. But if you really want a fully expensive meal, they give you a meager candle. And you sit in half daylight, or half light, trying to pick out distinguish what your food looks like, and pay much more money. There's no difference between lighting a candle and switching a light on, except the bhavana, the attitude with which you do it. The bhavana in the one is worshipful. The bhavana in the other is probably done carelessly. See how the Japanese do their tea ceremony? You and I slap some water in a cup, put a tea bag in, there's the end of it, slop it at you. The Japanese don't do it like that. The cups are carefully selected, preserved. There's a certain ceremony there in whisking the tea, smelling the fragrance, offering it nicely, dressing in a certain way, sitting there, smelling the fragrance, sipping it. All of these elements, ritualistic elements, are there. So all of this is ritualism. It's not just the worship and prayer portion that's ritual. All of this can be classified as potential ritualism. The ritual itself has no value if there's no bhavana in it. The jewelry and all that you offered has no value, but the tulsi has a value in the example. And then again, you see the delight in work. After the whole Mahabharata war, what happens? Everybody goes to pray, except Krishna. What does he do? He washes the horses. That's his delight. He feeds the horses, takes his yellow cloth off, puts the horse feed in there, feeds it loving to the horse, heals the burrs and so on and so forth, takes off all the saddlery and so on and so forth, washes them down. That's his delight. Does he have to do it? He doesn't have to do it. Lord of the universe. He doesn't have to do anything. He has nothing to gain or lose. Does it out of sheer love, the love of doing it. That's all. So a karma yogi, say, who is a farmer, will work will eat in order to work if he's a karma yogi. Anybody else simply doing karma, action of any kind, indiscriminately, will work in order to eat, that way around. Work to get a living. The other way around, I eat. Why? Make the body strong so that it can work. What's your delight? Work. Is it in the fruits? No. It's in the actual work. Because if I delight in the fruits, it'll create anxiety because it creates future orientation. I have to give up hope, anxiety and fear, all of these things. And all the things I want to have, all the gaps I assume I have inside that has to be fulfilled from that, we call it desires. We assume is a building made from holes, I have to fill it from the outside. It's not full. But somebody else, Stita Pratnya, says, I am full. My delight is only in the self, by the self, with the self, in the self, through the self. That's all. Delighting in the self, always feeling full. Not an optimist where the glass is half full, or a pessimist where it's half empty, but the glass is full and overflowing always. There's a difference. So it goes on to say, how are these two ancient paths complementary to each other? Are they complementary? Yes. It says, na karma nam anarabham nasya karmam purushosmiti na cha sanyasanad eva siddhim samadhi gacchati. It's not karmanam. It's not all these actions. Stopping actions doesn't stop action, nor does it give perfection. Why? Because if we take his story from the start, then what do? I sit, I see. But some action is taking place, breathing is taking place, yes. Heart is pumping, yes. Involuntary actions, no doubt, but actions are taking place. How will you sustain that? You have to eat. For most people, how will you eat? You have to get food. How will you acquire food? You have to do some action. And in the old days, they understood the science of that action. They understood that you start off with an element of ritualism, with bhavana. That will now create all the necessary requirements for you. All the necessary forces are put into action. We technically call that deva. Mistranslated as gods. No such thing. Just effulgent forces. Deva means light. Self-lighting, something that's it's a revealing factor. You can personalize it if you like in mythology. But deva is something else. Related to deeper. Something that lights. Diwali, festival of lights. So what is a deva? It's a divine cosmic principle. That's what it is. So man agains not actionless by abstaining from activity, nor does he rise to perfection by mere renunciation. If you say action, knowledge is better than action, then here's what I'll do. I'll restrain all the senses. I won't move, I won't open, I won't wink, I won't listen, I won't move my hand, I won't move my foot. But then what will be happening inside? All kinds of things. Somebody says, oh, here's the ideal thing. I think I'll retire to desert island. Very nice. Supposing you do that, the idea, I will sit. There are all resources around me, coconuts are there, fish are there, and so on and so forth. Some action will be necessary. Still, I'll be living away from everything, an idyllic life, and my mind will become calm and peaceful. Unfortunately, I didn't realize there were sharp rocks and mosquitoes. That's the difficulty. So when I sit there, ideal life, like a Thomas Cook holiday, sitting there, like, okay, blue ocean and so on and so forth. Oh, I wish I was near a McDonald's. I wish I was there. I just see all those things come. I wish I had a car. I wish I could explore the island. things are boring. I wish I had some books. I wish I had some CDs with me. I wish I had this, I wish I had that. We have this romantic idea, we sit still, and somehow revelation will come to us. That's not the idea. That's not knowledge, that's just foolishness. The goal in life of man is to merge into the Godhead. That's the goal. Variously Atma, self. So make a reminder knot of this fact in the corner of your handkerchief and fully engage in work. Kshanam api jatu tishtati akarma krunt. None can ever remain really actionless, even for a moment, for everyone is helplessly driven to action by the gunas born of Prakriti, and therein we require some explanation. This has to be repeated time and time again. So gunas is something that binds. These are ropes, they bind. You have a full explanation in the 14th chapter of this Bhagavad Gita. But there are some characteristics. And the first thing to understand is, and as soon as you understand this, realization flows. That all of nature, whole of nature, what we call nature, is none other than a combination of these three evolutionary forces. And what is seeing them, eyes, ears, and so on and so forth, the body, is exactly the same components. When you understand that the seeing mechanism and that which is seen, the object, is just exactly the same, nothing more. So for that reason, when we view somebody, a person, we have to view them in three ways. Firstly, understand, physical thing is there, that's fine. It's natural to see that. The eyes are designed to see an individuality like that, but we have to make a different valuation of it. What we call our body is just yesterday's pasta and tomatoes, that's all. Just food. Then the next position is, from the material, the next position we can make is, everyone is suffering. Why should we say not everyone, most people are suffering? Why should we say that? Because internally, in the mental makeup, which is exactly the same as the external, just a little bit more subtle, we have to learn the art of standing back and seeing all the stream of ideas that are flowing through the mental field. And then classifying them into three areas. They either fall under sattva, which stands for illumination. How will we know? We'll know because every gateway of the body is shining with it. When we tune into it, it's all there. When we make it habitual, then what we find is the mind is naturally sattvic, naturally full of illumination, naturally shining anywhere. Naturally, all our actions will be dedicated to the welfare of everybody. Not just this. What we call the ego, that was scrambling and fighting over toys when we were small. I want this toy, I want that toy. Now with a mature ego, we make it an open gateway for God's grace. Make it an open channel, freely distribute toys to everybody. With the same ego, just revalued. Where's sattva? It's binding, still, but we have to use it. It's a mechanism. Like if you have a thorn in your foot, you take another thorn and take it out. So use sattva to take off the thorn. Vedanta calls it variously Maya. What is Maya? Maya is the misunderstanding that all this is anything other than God. It's just fragmented God. Then, Rajas. From Sanskrit, raga, passion. Rajas is egocentric activity. And when we see the mind, an egocentric activity, you see that, its characteristic is greed. Well, what will we find? We find it produces pain. Why? Because it expresses, I have holes in me. I am an empty bucket that needs to be filled from outside. Continuously I have to do that, but the bucket never gets filled. So the more greed, the more it compounds. Filled with desires, like a fire. In this chapter it tells us, like a fire. A fire, you feed it with ghee. it'll create more fire. The flame will be much more vigorous. And then tamas, they also bind us because it compounds our ignorance. It compounds darkness on top of darkness, meaning darkness itself. So it also creates pain. Most people haven't learned to shift the gear upward into overdrive called sattva. They're like 3 gears in a car. Sattva, rajas, tamas, where you find rajas and tamas, you shift it to sattva. That's the technique. Play that game. That's the game of life. How to play it. Observe what's ruling. Rajas and tamas. Oh, put it up to sattva. Rajas and tamas will not reign predominantly together. When rajas dominates, sattva and tamas is down. When tamas dominates, you'll see it in the mind. Sometimes you see what's happening there in the stream of ideas. Oh, it's feeling lazy, lethargic, sleepy. Or it's no thinking, no direction, thoughtlessness, blanking out. Oh, let's energize it by shifting its gear up to the highest. Strong, true, wise, full, free, truth, beauty, goodness, love, higher values. Immediately do that. Learn the art of doing that. When it becomes habitual, we call it samadhi. Now, because most people are not doing that, what condition are they in? Pain. So when you look, the body made from food, made from the 3 gunas in a material sense. Then you look further, you see the psychological sense. You should be compassionate. Why? Most people are suffering. They may not know it. When they do know it, they'll be motivated to elevate the mind to a higher condition. It's only the person who has habitually saturated the mind with all these higher values that will be in a state of joy. And the Karma Yoga finds their joy in work because work for them is a means of engaging in sattva. Continuously engaging body and mind in the sattvic condition, always. Making it a refined thing. For that reason, all work will be absolutely perfect. It'll be like a worship, like a sacrifice. So, fundamental to any understanding of Vedanta, we have to understand the operation and function of these 3 gunas. And that has to be repeated continuously. In the Gita itself, the continuous repetition of it. So these gunas are born of Prakriti. And again, we have to understand what's the arrangement. We have to go back to the Samkhya. Samkhya philosophy is primarily dualistic. There's no God in it. But that doesn't mean to say that there's no validity in the process, disciplinary process of it, and in the arrangement of how they view the cosmos, and how they view our psychology, how the mind is. So we have Brahman. We put it in a slightly Vedantic way, because the language for that would be Purusha in Samkhya. Purusha doesn't say there's a totality. Purusha, their use of it says, there we have individual observation points called Purushas. Many. You have one, we all have one. Separate from that, but still eternal. Of course, you have to elevate it by virtue of a question, how many infinites can you have? We'll leave that aside. Then, the rest is called Prakriti. They were generous enough to put that as a totality. So what is Prakriti? For them, it's something that's inert, it has no life. It's just subject to transformational cause, causal law. It means a manufacturing process, nothing can be added or taken away. Same as physics. The sum total of energy is always the same. But it's inert. It's only activated by the proximity of Purusha. What is this composition? Indistinguishable. If something is unruffled, you can't distinguish what's what. As soon as there's a ruffling of waves, then you see it. Then what we see is a series of waves. We take the crest of it, sum it up, that becomes the sum total of our experience. In an unconditioned way is called Prakriti. Three gunas present, three gunas there in equilibrium. It's like a womb. And every origin comes from it. Everything originates from it. Then, when a ruffling takes place, the first thing is a seed is put in, as it were, and that manifests everything else. That seed is what we call cosmic mind. Vedanta calls it Hiranyagarbha, golden seed. The cosmic mind is the supreme thinker from which everything comes. In that sense, everything thereafter is just a manifestation of thought. Just thought waves, looking like you and me and so on, but thought waves. Thought waves, in their variation, are what we call these divine cosmic principles. Technical term, tanmatras. These tanmatras, in varying densities, varying wavelengths, varying frequencies, combinations, come down to us as the visible universe that we have. So that also must be an understanding that all this comes from these three evolutionary forces and then combined in various categories, totally, sum total of which we call Prakriti or nature. The final conclusion, only difference with Vedanta is Vedanta says we don't agree that it's inert because we have to make a totality. The dualist argues can't make a totality. If Moses got his illumination and there's a totality, we all will be illumined. If one person sins, we all sin. Advaita repulse to that is, no, it only looks like that. In the final conclusion, all that Prakriti disappears. Like the snake and the rope example. When I discover the rope, the snake disappears. There was no snake. So yes, there may be transformational cause here in this area of nature, but when we go to the final conclusion, it's apparitional cause. That's the conclusion. We have to understand, when we talk of Prakriti, we have to understand what all that means. The Gita is written in such a way, it's taken for granted, you understand, when you say Prakriti, what does it mean? But because it's written in, as all the literature is written, in song or verse, or various stanzas, prose and poetry and so on, they're to be remembered and to be expanded on by commentaries, teachers and so on. Now, we go on quickly. You see, the question, if one attempts to abandon this karma, the action, while being bound in Prakriti, the consequence will be disastrous. How? Go to the sixth stanza. Karmendriyani samyamya. That deluded man, karmendriya, the organs of action, restraining them, one who sits aste, ya aste manasasmaran, indriyartan mudatma, vityachara sa uchate. That deluded man is called actually the hypocrite, who sits controlling organs of action but dwelling in his mind on the objects of the senses. Two friends went to hear scripture. For argument's sake, two friends went to come here. Then one saw a pub on the corner and said, I'll rather go there. The other one came to here. Then after some while, the person here said, all this Prakriti, it's all very boring. He lost me 5 minutes ago. But my friend is enjoying drinking Guinness in the pub. I made a mistake. Now it's too late, I can't escape. I should have gone with him. The man in the pub was thinking, I feel very ashamed. My friend had a much more noble attitude. He went and learned and came and try to develop his understanding of the scripture. Regardless of where the person was positioned, what was in their mind is the real story. So just sitting without doing anything is just hypocrisy, actually. So what should the aspirant do? The answer comes in the next one. This. Yes, the indriyani manasa yamyarapati arjuna kamyendriyaya karma yogam asakta sa vishishyate. Whoso excels, O Arjuna, is the one who, restraining the senses of the mind, unattached, directs his organs of action to the path of work. You can't have anything more plain than that. Straightforward. Restraining the senses of the mind. The real senses are the mind. The eyeball is not the sense organ, the real sense organ. It's just a material instrument, but it doesn't really see. It's only a neurological mechanism that takes place there. But no seeing is there if the attention is not attached to it. Even if a person sleeps, you open the eyelid, the eyeball stares out at you, it doesn't see. Not the eye literally that sees. Some other things must be there. The brain, the neurological system must be attached, but ultimately attention must be attached. The real sense organ comes out in a dream and plays. The real sense organ is part of the mind. Again, coming to this Sankhya arrangement of the mind. Psychology is very valid for all these systems. What is the mind? They're composed of various different parts. That's why we know it's not the permanent reality. Why? Because it's a combination of things. It's a coordination of so many different parts. Your sense organs are there. The mind is there, a kind of reception office. Memory is also there, a kind of library where you can go in, select what you want, bring it out. Attention is there like a probe. Searching out, revealing, probing, discovering. It goes all over the place if untrained. You take it and make it steer toward something which is something. Do that continuously. Make it a game. Do it sportfully, artfully, lovingly. Always do it. Even in the midst of work, do it. That's the idea. Then there's the intellect, a steering mechanism, a willing mechanism behind it, buddhi. Buddha, somebody of an enlightened intellect. Seems to be intelligent by itself, but it's just a reflection. The real reality there, sitting, beaming behind Atma. Like a panes of glass. Two panes of glass got together. They said, we're tired of the sun beaming through us. It's called immanence. So we'll form a company, we'll register it, get some accountancy advice, legal advice, and so on. Register it nicely under the Companies Registration Act with one mission. First of all, we're tired of the sun beaming through us. We'll stop it. We'll demand a passport. Secondly, we'll finance ourselves by making money. We'll charge a toll fee. Whenever the sun wants to come through, we'll stop him. Please, you've been having a free journey through us, free passage. Now we'll stop you. We demand a passport and a fee. So they got together in their boardroom, made a resolution like that, stood together solidly. The sun came through, of course, still beamed through. So they jostled together, made themselves into fragments, and destroyed themselves. Still the sun beamed through. It's called transcendence. So these things, thing is, with all these fragmentations, with an assertive ego, not understanding, the real effulgency comes from behind. Please understand that. So restraining the sense of the mind, unattached, directs his organs of action to the path of work. What should the aspirant then do? It comes in the next stanza. Niyatam kuru karmatam karma jaya karmanaha. Bounden, niyatam. Engage yourself in bounden, obligatory work. For action is superior to inaction. And if inactive, even the mere maintenance of your body would not be possible. What's the obligatory work? Whatever's in front of you. You don't discriminate and prioritize. Whatever is here, I do it in the moment. If I ever put it into the future with a thought, what will I get from it? I'll get stress and anxiety. What will I do? Enjoy the present moment. Tune into that. How many things do you have to do? Oh, so many things. Let's see. Actually, it's only one, because there's only 1 second available at any given moment. What are the 2 seconds that come together? 1 second, then another, then another. 1 minute, then another, then another. Time isn't arranged like that. It's in your favor, so that it doesn't all get mixed up. In the old days, in a typewriter, you'll know, before these computers and so on, you try and type everything in one go, all the levers and so will all get entangled. So fortunately, we have a time which says we can do one thing, then another thing, then another thing. How many things do you have? One thing, then another thing, then another thing, then another thing. Good. That makes for efficiency. And no stress. Oh, I have so many things to do. Did you make a to-do list? Yes. But still, it just gives me more stress. I see. Why don't you cross out to do and put flower offerings? It's much better. Then every action becomes a flower offering. Done lovingly with Bhagavad. For that reason, it comes on now to the great subject, which is really the greatness of what is called yajna. So we have to understand the term, what is yajna? You can put, if you like Deva, make it pure. Even if we don't do it, we still have Deva. So remember, Deva is what I describe as divine cosmic principle. Yajna, worship. In all cultures in the ancient days, fire was honored. You can see how ancient that is, because one of the greatest discoveries of man was fire, and required considerable endeavor. Friction is necessary, rubbing things together, very carefully taking a spark, cultivating it nicely, blowing on it, and then adding a little fuel, carefully, cautiously to it. If you want to sustain it, you probably have to carry it around with you. In the ancient days, keeping the fire going was very important. Fire symbolizing God leading the devotee forward. Sustained by ghee offering. Why ghee? Ghee is a cow product and represents a flowing entity. The cow being a machine, you feed grass in one end, but it comes out the other. A wonderful thing, freely giving it to us as if we were its calf. See, in the preliminary prayer to the Bhagavad Gita, is represented like that Upanishads are like the milch cow, others there, and we collect the essence from it. And Krishna, being the milker, will feed it to Arjuna, representing all of us. God's grace flowing freely. What's the evidence of it? You digest your food, Don't tell me it's you. Up until 1-2 years of age, you didn't have any self-identity. No ego present. Yet your food got digested. Some entity lovingly does it. Some entity lovingly pumps your heart, circulates your blood, renews all the cells. Don't debate about reincarnation. Every moment, this body is reincarnating. Dead cells die. From food, new cells are born. Continuously. Kind of reincarnation going on. These ancient people understood a tremendous art. We can get whatever we want. How? By putting this Bhagavad in it. So what we do is, by reciting various prayers, mantras, mantra being protecting thought, we're able to manipulate the forces of nature which belong to God, God's grace. We can manipulate it in various ways, get whatever we want. In the beginning, the universe was conceived as something like that. So from a fireball or from stardust, something with heat, we get some fluidity and then some solidity, becomes the universe for us. And then before that, a kind of electromagnetic wave system operating everywhere, and a plot called falling. We call it gravity. All of that is there, provided free of charge. Normally we have to pay for something, but this is all free of charge. And a mechanism for tapping into it in the maximum way. It's called yajna. So the formal thing like that. Is there a danger? Yes, there's a danger. That we forget all the intrinsic meanings of it. The potency in it is the mantra. But even that's not potent if there's no meaning that goes with it. Every word has a concept, a picture, and a concept, and an understanding. That's the driving force. Bearing in mind that everything came from Hiranyagarbha, a cosmic mind. Everything thereafter is its variation. Now, if we want to stir something, we have to use that same cosmic mind. We have to understand what you call your mind, my mind, and so on. It's just a convenience term that means nothing. It's only one mind, only one thinker. So that entity, according to the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, is a thinker, knower, witness, all in one. Representing Satchidananda, where we say Sat, existence, something that is existence, knowing that at a certain point we have to acknowledge it. Knowing that the body is variable, it comes and goes. The cells are always renewed. Knowing that there's no stability for the mind either, the materials will have to stop there. Say nothing is there beyond it. But investigation will show that existence cannot come from nothing. Something must exist. So that being there, that existent entity representing a knower. Why? Because if it's existent, it knows everything. As its consciousness, it's therefore a thinker, the eternal thinker, behind all thoughts. And as an ananda, it has the joy of witnessing. There's no joy in being part and parcel of a play. Isn't it? You're on the stage with stage nerves, stage fright. You come on. After a few performances, it might get easier and so on and so forth. Being self-conscious, you say, how many people in the audience today? Oh dear, oh dear. Nerves, 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 and so on. It's much more pleasant to be in the audience, enjoying it, isn't it? So a witness is an enjoyer, actually. Sakshi is an enjoyer. So that's the whole point. So being a thinker, all thoughts are infallible, provided we line everything up and never contradict it. Having a clear word, mantra. Having a clear concept, picture. Having a clear intention, all in a line, it comes to fruition and becomes a manifested world for us. We can get anything we like from it. Should we light a fire literally to do it? No, it's not the fire. It's what's in the mind. It's the thought that has the potency. So if we now say, there's a new kind of yajna, what is that? All these actions that were previously up there, job, career, domestic, physical, all these actions now become your yajna. Why? Because they're accompanied by a potency, a thought, an intention, a purity, some love is there. A devotional attitude is there, a worshipful attitude is there. That becomes your yajna. Through that you'll get everything. That's why all this abundance will come to you. If you let it go, all this comes to you by virtue of the potency of the thought that carries it. You get the idea? So that's it. So that's yajna. Now the meter of the verse changes nicely because it's a very important thing. So the greatness of yajna is here from this stanza 9 to 13 is the greatness of yajna. It begins, Yatyartat karmano yatra. The world is bound by actions other than those performed for the sake of yajna. Any action that you do will bind you to what? To fear and pain. It will restrict you. We want freedom, we only find a binding situation, limitation. The world is bound by actions other than those performed for the sake of yajna. Do therefore, O son of Kunti, earnestly perform action for worship alone, yajna, free from attachment. All action therefore becomes a beautiful garland of flowers presented to your deity. And then, having created mankind in the beginning together with yajna, the Prajapati said, that's the Lord.
I didn't understand how does karma gets bound in the bandhanas?
Yeah. You see, because yajna's only component is sattva, purity. All other actions being egocentric.
So are actions always egocentric?
Actions, if they require a result for us.
Okay.
See?
Yeah.
So
result-oriented actions.
Yeah. So for example, in the example I gave you, supposing you say, okay, you work for somebody, then at the end of it, that somebody says, it's a recession, unfortunately no wages for you. I'll leave the job and go somewhere else. Extreme example of karma yoga, you say, well, that's okay, I didn't come for the wages. A normal, sensible person would say, that's ridiculous. How will you live? How will you work? How will you eat? How do you earn a living? How will you pay the rent? All of these things. The karma yoga, you will understand, all these resources are there, are asked. So what do? My joy is in the work. Once he has that idea and knows the secret of that, abundance comes to him. That's such an extreme point of view that nobody will try it. Isn't it? I have my accountancy clients. They don't have to pay me. I just enjoy doing the work. How practical is it? It doesn't seem very practical. But you see, if you say, I do this work as an offering Godwards, then what will happen? Money will flow from somewhere, is the principle. If you have faith in that principle, you can try it out. We sannyasis, we do it. We say, okay, see, when we are initiated in the sannyas, at least for a period of time, 3 days officially as part of the ceremony, you go with a simple cloth and a bowl, take your food. People will feed you. They won't feed you here. They'll kick you out as a vagrant or something. That's the likelihood. But in India you can do it because there's an accepted understanding. This is what you're doing. And they'll throw the food in. One piece of food will not be distinguished from the other. That's deliberately done, but beautiful. It's the sweetest fruit you could ever have. What's your roof? The sky. Here you'll require a raincoat, of course. What's your bed? The ground. Where will you go? Oh, wait, just wander. Where will your mind be? Fixed on God. What plan will you make? How will you sustain yourself? But wonderfully, God looks after you. You're fed, you're clothed. Where's the story of this in religion? Exodus, in the Jewish tradition. People wandering allegedly for 40 years and so on in the desert. They didn't know where food would come from. Where would you get food in the desert? But manna fell from heaven. Quails came and all the rest of it. They got fed. They found water. Where do you find water in the desert for 40 years? There's no record, or we had to dispatch so many people, so many people had to be buried and so on and so forth. You may say it's just a story, but the meaning behind it is this. We're walking in a trackless desert, struggling to find this and that. Much better to open. You give the example, really from the yoga philosophy. Vitanjali Yoga Sutras mention it. There you find a different kind of evolution described. Supposing you have a great resource of water, huge dam here, look at it from plan view, and a dam wall here with gates. Supposing you decide, I have to transfer water from here to here. So what will I do? I'll use a bucket. In Zimbabwe we have a very huge dam, or even in America you can take the Edward Hoover Dam, whatever it is, vast quantity of water, like a vast lake. In your lifetime you will never be able to transfer the water by bucket. There's a much easier way. This kind of self-effort is binding. It will never give us the result we want, even though we'd be looking for it. There's a much easier way. Remove the obstacle that's there. Listen, you open up these gates here, water will flood through by itself. Its own momentum will take it. Effortlessly, we can do it. The whole of spiritual life is removing obstacles. The obstacles are here, we take them off. This chapter itself will mention it. What's in the way, what's the obstacles? We call them desires. Like an embryo covered, like fire covered by smoke. That's what, like a mirror covered by dust. Remove the dust. I may have mentioned the example, but I'll do it again for the children. The story. You have to say once upon a time. Once upon a time, the two people engaged by a king. He had a huge hall. So what he wanted to do was, he said, this hall is just blank walls like this. It's not very interesting. I want to entertain guests in it, so I'll invite two artists. They can paint something beautiful, and so that they do a good job, I'll put a bag of gold as a prize. So the person who makes the best picture, he can get the prize. So they came along. One came, we put up a big scaffolding with the paper. You know how they do it? They make a figure, and then they tap holes in it. Called pansing, with chalk. Then they put it on the wall, then they paint it. He did something like that, like Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel, did something like that. The other person just bought a small trowel. Yeah, what I forgot to mention was, the walls were not walls like these, they were made from marble. Marble can be polished. He took a small silver trowel, polish. After a while, he also got scaffolding where the places were too high to reach. Polish. It shone like a mirror. The king came in at the end of the month. Let me see. They unveiled both sides. The one side, he didn't do anything. He just made a mirror. The other side is beautiful. Cherubs and this and that and the other, all kinds of artistic angels flying around and so on. But the other side was just a reflection of it. With the one bonus, when you look at it, you can see yourself also. They gave the prize to that one. Instead of doing all that hard work, both are doing work, but of a different type. One is doing a polishing. The other one is investing with great energy and anxiety. They do this, do that, do the other. All you have to do is a little polishing. Polish the mind. Every activity is only there for one reason, purifying the mind. Now, any action that is not dedicated to purifying the mind will bind us. It'd be like trying to transfer water from a huge reservoir laboriously by hand to the other side. The other technique, let me open. And spiritual life requires an opening. Egoism is a closing mechanism, is a contracting mechanism. But when we have a more illuminating point of view, it becomes an opening and it becomes an expanding thing. Spirituality is an expansion. Ignorance is a contraction. We find ourselves in a situation like this. With a B body and a C mind, erroneously called my mind. And then all kinds of people, places, events. And we decide, I am this. And we put a fight against here, make a protection. The best way to defend is attack. See this as a threat. And try and fight against it. Maintaining our status quo. Developing a personality around it. With certain traits designed to protect. We do it when we're small. When we are 1 foot and everybody else is 6 foot. We develop a strategy, defensive strategy. And that develops an individual personality, which either becomes predominantly willing or thinking or feeling. The thinking people will find a very convenient point, starting point, jnana yoga. The feeling people will find a natural starting point, devotion to God. But the willing doing people will find a natural point of karma yoga, doing for God's service. When you combine the two, you get an added benefit. 4 yogas were not mentioned here, only 2. Jnana, karma. All the other yogas are subsidiary that come under them. Your bhakti yoga, you hook it in with karma yoga, is a very nice arrangement. You do all actions then as an act of devotion. What will happen then? You no longer fight here. You take all of this and revalue it as God. Then you take this body and say, this is God's temple. Then you take this mind and you say, it's His sitting room. Where will your evaluation lead you? To a point here, outside here. Self, cosmic thinker, knower, witness. Then you can learn, I can stand here if I want. I don't have to stand here and make a combat here. I can let go, open out, expand. I can stand here, direct things from here. You learn to do that. In this Bhagavad Gita, what's the analogy? The analogy is this, it's called Krishna. You can stand here, and then operate here. You can operate the intellect and so on. This becomes your chariot. With 5 horses, 10 horses if you like, organs of action, organs of knowledge. Instead of them going in different directions, steer them in one direction. do that with concentration. All this symbology is beautiful. We could have selected any example, but why military people with arrows? The Upanishad has the answer, isn't it? The Mundaka Upanishad describes a bow. Take the bow, the Upanishads. Take your target as the Om. Concentration, the aim. See how beautiful it's put. You could have used any example, but use an extreme example. This is a field, your battlefield. Don't take it as a battle. Shift your understanding and see it's a delight, it's a joy. Even the most extreme thing, offer with great devotion and love Godwards. That's the form. We didn't complete all the 25, but we'll leave it at there. We'll pick it up next week. The birds of the air, as Jesus, and birds of the air are fed, lilies of the field are clothed. You don't have to ask for it. See, the difficulty is this. If I ask for something, there's a bracketed portion that says I haven't got. So +1, -1, you don't get anywhere. Please give me this, means I haven't got. +1, -1, okay. If I say, please give abundance for everybody, it's an all-inclusive formula. I get the abundance as well. The spirit of generosity. May all beings be happy. The best way to be happy is make everybody happy.
Yeah, so there wouldn't be anyone who is going to snatch you, who is going to rob you. Or,
Yeah, it's like Kashmir and I were talking during the week, and we were just saying that worry is really effective because 99% of the things you worry about never happen anyway.
Yeah. And we're suffering much more than a Jesus on the cross. We're good at renouncing. All of us renounce joy. We decide. We renounce joy and go for the hard thing, hard task. So letting go. Letting go doesn't mean vagrancy. It means working very hard, extremely hard, but without any stress. No stress necessary. With a delight. Given a choice, won't I elevate all my mind, all my energies toward the highest, most joyful thing? When I select joy rather than concern and stress and difficulties. But those options are there. If you know it, make your selection. It's a game, like a tennis game. Game of life, how to play it. The Advaitist will have an adventurous spirit. Say, Lord, you play on the opposite side, I'll sit here. What will be your prayer every day? Lord, please give me a curveball. Not rescue me. Give me your most interesting and skilled shot. Aim it at me. I may miss it, but I'll try and hit it and do it repeatedly. So as a result, I'll learn the art, learn it, until knowledge comes of it. Then we'll try another angle. The goal is apaya, fearlessness. If you know all of this is God, all of it is He, no second, one without a second. That knowledge will make you absolutely fearless. Play life as a game. Nitya Leela. Not only is it eternal, but Leela, it's a play also. You play it nicely, fearlessly, joyfully, lovingly. Do it. Lord, please give me a curveball today. At the end of the day, maybe a complaint. You never gave me a curveball today. Everything was smooth. Please tomorrow give me a curveball. Give me your next surprise around the corner. Not sit there, Lord, miserable, you do everything. There's a game of doubles with no opponent on the other side. Only God, but God's not an opponent. He being omnipresent will be there and here and everywhere. I stand in the corner. I sit here, Wimbledon tennis. Lord, you play. At the end of it, after he wins, he'll win because he's the Lord. You go and accept the cup unfairly. You did everything. I just sat and watched. I'll get the cup. No. No, you give me an easy game. If it's a game of singles, you hit the ball so high, we go off, have strawberries and cream and so on, come back. By the time it's landed, I get a chance to hit it nicely. Nobody will watch a game like that. Much better to have an exciting game. Deuce, advantage, advantage, deuce, 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 advantage, advantage. The longer you keep the game, the more entertaining. It's called reincarnation. Extending the game is called reincarnation. Of course, we don't really believe in reincarnation. We don't believe in this incarnation. Good. You're right.